If you're a music fan, and I'd assume you are if you're watching this absolute slop, music is probably an important factor when considering who to be romantically involved with. In the years past, you had to scour through a record collection to find out whether your music taste clicks with a person, which means you may already be stuck in the household of somebody with the full Beatles collection on vinyl, which is terrifying. Luckily nowadays, a music taste is easy to find. Public Spotify playlists, Instagram stories, people essentially parade what they believe is a cool music taste to anyone who may follow them or even have the slightest interest. Due to this fact, we're now able to avoid individuals who have what I call a red flag music taste. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on the female side of things, female manipulator music if you may, and as a professional, chronically online dating guru, I'll make you aware of some of the artists to avoid. And before you comment calling me sexist, I've spent this channel's entire lifespan specifically roasting motherfuckers who look like this, so I think it's only fair we dip into the other side a little bit. And of course, the male version of this video is coming out soon, don't you worry. Male manipulators are probably more heinous than any of the individuals I'm going to cover in this video. Also, believe it or not, I do speak to women, and I was luckily able to discuss this topic on a round table with every single woman on the planet. This video is a parody, do not take any actual advice from the absolute waz I'm about to spout, form your own opinion, and do not attack anybody mentioned. I think it's best we cover the most egregious and common examples first, just in case any of you ADHD riddled motherfuckers somehow get bored of this ridiculously fast-paced editing and click off the video. A fanbase that is pretty consistently in the news and the culture zeitgeist for being legitimately insane are, of course, you probably guessed it, Swifties. It's almost impossible to criticize, make fun of, or create any sort of parody for this ridiculously over-the-top fanbase without receiving hate, insults, and even death threats, which is very exciting. I'll pin the most creative one. Although we could probably group all superfan or stan subcultures into the same cauldron of complete and utter cringe and gaslighting, I haven't seen a stan culture more passionate and ravenous than Swifties. As a musician, Taylor Swift has produced some quality music, but come on now, she isn't the bass god. People have no right to be behaving like this after hearing Taylor Swift play a G chord on an acoustic guitar. One thing that remains consistent throughout the more so die-hard portion of the fanbase is the consistent defense of Taylor Swift and her management, regardless of the situation. For example, during the album rollout of Midnights, Taylor Swift, or more likely her management team, planned a gigantic vinyl release with large amounts of special editions, giving her die-hard fans a large amount of options when choosing which piece of molded plastic to waste their money on. That's until you realise there are only around 40 vinyl production plants in the entirety of the US. This means large rollouts for popular artists can develop a backlog, especially when factories need to press 6 different splatter variants of a mediocre folk record. This resulted in independent artists having to wait at times an entire year to get their vinyl printed. The sale of vinyl is far more important for independent artists, as it can make up a huge portion of their income, and at times can be the thing keeping them afloat. Like, realistically, vinyl wouldn't even be cool or trendy if it wasn't for the underground, so obviously this is quite bad, although likely is more so a symptom of Taylor's management team and the over-commercialization of music as a whole than Taylor herself, although it's difficult to know for sure. So what the f does it all mean, and how does this relate to dating in any way? Well, Swifties are known for over-defending any actions of Taylor that may seem negative, and also putting her on such a ridiculous pedestal that it's almost impossible to take it seriously. If an individual is willing to frantically defend somebody whose relationship with them is purely parasocial, how will they defend their own actions, the actions of others in their life? Not to mention you'll be forced to listen to a white woman whine about their dating life with an acoustic guitar for hours. And I know I've basically just described Midwest emo, but where the fuck are the math rock elements? If I'm going to listen to somebody whine, at least I can hear a few slides and pull-offs. Next artist is of course the Beatles, but this is less so because of how the individual may act. If somebody is actively standing and listening to the Beatles, in particular this dude, their taste in partners must be absolutely atrocious. That probably says something about you more so than the person who's the Beatles fan there. So I've shit on the Beatles so much on this channel it's legitimately becoming boring, so let's swiftly move on to another band I make fun of endlessly, Deftones. This is actually very recent. Deftones fans were amongst the best, maybe the greenest flag before the devastation that was caused by TikTok. The band itself is incredibly varied, interesting, and for the most part attracts cool people until they are plagued by a Chinese algorithm. TikTok suddenly made it cool and trendy to listen to Deftones, specifically for women, meaning much of the current fanbase will basically listen to whatever they're told to listen to. Obviously, somebody so easily influenced by trends isn't the ideal person to spend time with. Like, imagine Radiohead suddenly becomes a TikTok phenomenon and you have to be subjected to this fucking dude singing. I genuinely can't think of anything worse. Let's very quickly touch on Phoebe Bridgers. Essentially everything I said about Taylor Swift except to put a Halloween filter on it. They also think they're way more edgy and special than Taylor Swift fans, although I'm definitely a Phoebe Bridgers fan, so maybe this is actually me, I don't know. Let's move on to another one that I wasn't overly familiar with before I partook in my market research of the opposite gender, Mitski. You know it's bad when the artist in question is so sick and tired of the culture surrounding her fanbase that she wipes herself from social media and consistently asks her fans to retire the sad girl aesthetic. Obviously anyone referring to themselves as a sad girl is a red flag in itself, and can I just say I absolutely despise the term red flag? Like, this is how I look every time I'm saying it in this video, but I don't even know what the fuck else to use. Of course, the rise of TikTok has meant that Mitski has built a very hyper online fan base where individuals see her music as a part of their identity, with many of her fans over relating to an artist who is essentially just a stage character. Mitski fans have also been known to ridiculously overanalyze songs, leading to gatekeeping and bullying over songs that aren't even clearly about anything specific or the specific thing that they believe it's about. Since the majority of Mitski's songs are about either falling in love or falling out of love, you best believe you're going to be on a roller coaster of emotions, which is going to completely depend on the Mitski song your potential partner listened to in the shower that day. Let's move on to this rooster-headed motherfucker. Why did he change his hair? This was so good, I actually enjoyed this. For some strange reason, The Weeknd has one of the most entitled fan bases, with perhaps one of the biggest superiority complexes within popular music. Obviously it gets much f***ing worse in metal, but at least the music is somewhat interesting. As The Weeknd has been known to change his musical style as his career has progressed, there's a huge divide within the fan base on which era is the best, with self-entitled gatekeeping his older music. What most of these fans don't realise is the music has essentially just become poppier, so this motherfucker can make way more money and appeal to way more people. I think across the board, individuals who seem to completely ignore or be unaware of the fact that money is the main driving force behind the majority of these popular artists are usually the ones to avoid, but that is way too serious and actually good advice, and this is a joke and a parody video, so look at this instead. Fans of The Weeknd will brag about how kinky they are before starfishing the entire night and giving you the toothiest head known to man. Let's move on to the final and potentially worst offender, another artist that I was actually completely unaware of before I spoke to a real woman, Melanie Martinez. So our fan base literally call themselves crybabies, and if that doesn't tell you all you need to know, I honestly don't know what the f will. To go into more needless detail, these crybabies essentially encourage an artist who actively sexualizes acting and dressing like a f***ing child. Very weird. I think it's probably best to just avoid any human being that feels the need to label themselves based on their enjoyment of a musician. Whatever genre, whatever style, it's just strange in my eyes. So there we go, an entire video full of absolute bollocks with zero real advice and some useless information about the downsides of certain artists who earn literally millions of what is essentially pop music. In all honesty, although music can portray a side of somebody's personality, and of course parasocial relationships and defending poor behaviour due to these said relationships don't usually reflect a good person, it's probably best you take everything I said in this parody video with a grain of salt, unless it's a cross punk. Literally never date a cross punk.